What if I told you there is a submarine, roughly 170 meters long, where 155 people can live for months without a single breath of fresh air? The most expensive and the quietest weapon humanity has ever built, 70 days underwater, and people volunteer for it. How they survive is a question of engineering, and the answer will surprise you. 70 days, a standard patrol. That number means nothing on its own. So picture this: you do not leave an apartment shared with 154 strangers, and none of you can so much as open a window, from New Year's Day to mid-March. During that time, the crew consumes tens of thousands of liters of water. Every drop must either be carried aboard or produced on the spot. Another number, carbon dioxide. Every person exhales approximately 200 grams of carbon dioxide per hour. 155 people, that is more than 31 kilograms of carbon dioxide every hour. Over 70 days, nearly 52 tons of carbon dioxide generated inside a sealed hull. That is the weight of 4 London double-decker buses of pure carbon dioxide inside your boat, and the crew is still alive, still breathing. Most people assume a submarine carries enormous reserves of oxygen, cylinders, containers, tanks. It makes sense, does not it? No air outside, so you bring it with you. At first glance, it sounds entirely plausible, but here is the problem. If Ohio were actually required to carry all the oxygen for 155 people over 70 days, it would need dozens of tons of compressed gas. This would physically prevent loading missiles, power systems, food, and the crew itself. The hull simply could not accommodate it. The reality has nothing to do with reserves. Everything depends on production, in real time, on board. A submarine is not a sealed box of air. It is a mobile factory running a closed loop, and this is where the real engineering begins. Oxygen must be generated. The most obvious method is electrolysis. Water plus electrical current yields oxygen and hydrogen. Basic school chemistry. And yes, submarines do exactly this. The electrolysis system on Ohio produces enough oxygen for the entire crew. As long as the reactor is generating power, it works. But that is only the first layer. Before going further, one question that most people never ask: why is any of this possible at all? Why can a submarine produce oxygen, desalinate water, maintain lighting, ventilation, and temperature for months without stopping? The answer is singular: a nuclear reactor. It provides unlimited electrical power for the entire duration of the submarine's time underwater. A diesel submarine cannot do any of what we are about to describe. It simply lacks the energy. A nuclear boat can do all of it. The reactor is not an engine. It is the foundation on which every system aboard rests. But there is a detail that usually gets skipped. Electrolysis produces not only oxygen, it also produces hydrogen. And hydrogen inside a sealed metal hull is an explosive gas. You have solved the oxygen problem and immediately created a new one. The solution is simple. Hydrogen is continuously vented overboard through a dedicated loop, invisibly, constantly, yet another system that cannot stop for a single second. And in case electrolysis fails, there is a backup: oxygen candles, metal cylinders packed with sodium chlorate and iron powder. Strike them and they burn, releasing oxygen, a fire that saves you from suffocation. This is not a figure of speech. There is literally a specific type of combustion aboard, designed for survival. Submariners call them chlorate candles, and every one of them knows exactly where they are stored. Oxygen is half the problem. The other half is carbon dioxide. Here are the numbers. At 3% carbon dioxide in the air, a person can no longer think clearly. At 5%, they lose consciousness. At 10%, death comes within minutes. In a sealed space with 155 people, this is not theoretical. It is a clock that is always running. To stop it, chemistry is employed, specifically monoethanolamine, or MEA. It sounds complicated. It works simply. Air is passed through a system containing this liquid. MEA binds carbon dioxide and strips it from the air. The liquid is then heated. It releases the carbon dioxide, which is vented overboard. the MEA returns to the system over and over without interruption. But here is what rarely gets mentioned. Carbon dioxide is not the only problem. Inside a sealed metal hull filled with machinery, batteries, and 155 people, much else accumulates. Carbon monoxide, hydrogen vapors, and paradoxically, vapors of the MEA itself, the substance intended to clean the air. It permeates everything: clothing, bedding, skin. For this, there is yet another system, one that burns off the carbon monoxide and hydrogen, converting them to carbon dioxide and water vapor, after which the carbon dioxide goes back to the MEA scrubber, a cycle within a cycle, around the clock, for 4 months. And here is where things become genuinely interesting. All of this covers only the AIR. We have not yet touched on psychology. A submarine does not merely regulate air, it regulates every single resource aboard on a closed-loop principle. And this is not only about survival, it is about the fact that any leak to the outside world is a catastrophe. Water. Every person needs a minimum of 3 liters per day for drinking alone. Add hygiene, food preparation, and technical systems. 155 people, 70 days. That is tens of thousands of liters, with nowhere to source them because the only source is the ocean. A desalination unit heats seawater, collects the vapor, and condenses it back into liquid. The output is clean water. On modern nuclear submarines of the Virginia class, the output can reach up to 50,000 liters per day, more than the crew can consume. If the system stops, the crew has approximately 48 hours before physical collapse. Not weeks, not days, 48 hours. Wastewater, it is compressed and fired overboard through dedicated pipes in sealed capsules. Even waste cannot simply be discarded because it would reveal the boat's position. Food is loaded for the entire patrol in advance. On US submarines, cooks prepare 4 meals a day. The quality of food is one of the most important factors in maintaining morale. The US Navy officially regards submariners as receiving the best food in the armed forces. This is not a luxury, it is an engineering decision about human performance. And here is where the designers made a choice that changed everything. The greatest problem is not oxygen and not water. The greatest problem is time. At depth, there is no sun, no natural day-night cycle. The human circadian rhythm, the internal clock that runs on roughly 24 hours, begins to drift within a few days without light cues. The result is disorientation, slowed reaction times, aggression, and depression. On modern submarines, both the American Ohio class and the British Vanguard class, lighting is automatically controlled. In the morning, warm yellow light simulates sunrise. During the day, cool white light maintains alertness. In the evening, the lights gradually dim. This is not comfort, it is the maintenance of cognitive function in crew members who are operating nuclear weapons. A submarine runs on a watch rotation, 6 hours on watch, 12 hours off. This creates an 18-hour day, shorter than the natural one. Sleep, eat, stand, watch. Bunks, known as missile beds, are positioned in the narrow space between compartments. The gap between mattress and ceiling is less than 60 centimeters. You are literally sleeping inside the weapons. And there is more. Junior sailors on most submarines practice hot racking. A single bunk is shared between 2 or 3 people on different watch rotations. You get up and someone else lies down. The mattress is still warm from the previous body. This is not a metaphor for confined quarters. It is the literal reality in which you have no bed of your own for 4 months straight. But there is one more detail that few people know, and it concerns how a submarine remains undetectable, even while 155 people are constantly doing things inside it. The Ohio belongs to the SSBN class, Strategic Ballistic Missile Submarines. Its cost exceeds $2 billion. Its primary weapon is not the missiles, it is silence. The entire internal infrastructure, pipes, pumps, motors, is mounted on vibration dampening platforms. No mechanism makes direct contact with the hull. Vibration is absorbed at the level of the metal's molecular structure. The crew wears soft-soled shoes. In certain sections, speaking above a whisper is prohibited. This matters because a hostile ship's hydrophone can distinguish between a normal footstep and one taken in a rubber sole. And this is where acoustic discipline becomes genuinely personal. A submarine on patrol does not transmit at all. To send a signal is to reveal a position. Communication therefore flows in one direction only. The boat receives messages via very low frequency radio, which penetrates to great depth in the ocean, but it does not respond, ever. The crew receives what are called familygrams, brief messages from loved ones, typically no longer than 50 words. Your wife has given birth. Your father has fallen ill. Your child started school. You read it and you cannot reply. Not a single word. This is not a technical limitation that was reluctantly accepted. It is a deliberate engineering decision to which everything else is subordinated. Think of a thermos. Hot coffee inside, cold outside. The thermos keeps warmth in and cold out. A submarine is a thermos in reverse, except that instead of temperature, what is being contained is acoustics, pressure, resources, and human psychology. What happens without a closed loop? In 1961, the Soviet submarine K-19 had no backup reactor cooling circuit. A leak developed. The crew attempted to manage the emergency by hand. 8 men died of radiation exposure within weeks, and a further 14 died over the following 2 years. 22 people in total. The cause was not the technical failure itself. The cause was the absence of a redundant closed loop that could have isolated the problem. The stakes are these. If the air purification system fails, the crew has between 6 and 12 hours before carbon dioxide reaches critical levels. If the water production system stops, 48 hours before physical collapse. If acoustic discipline breaks down, a hostile vessel can fix the position within minutes. If the chronobiological regime collapses and the crew loses sleep, the cognitive function of the people operating nuclear weapons degrades to the equivalent of a blood alcohol level of 0.1%, according to Stanford's Sleep Research Center. And if the social structure, including watches, meals, and hierarchy, disintegrates, there is no mechanism at that depth to restore it. This is precisely why submariners are not merely technically trained individuals. They undergo one of the most rigorous psychological selection processes in any branch of the armed forces. What is tested is not only reaction speed and knowledge. What is tested is how a person behaves in an enclosed space under pressure, literally and figuratively, whether they can sleep alongside strangers for months, whether they can maintain a clear head without seeing sunlight for weeks. A human being here is also part of the system. Like any system, they are certified before deployment. There is one detail I have saved for the end. A submarine may be the only place on Earth where a government spends billions to ensure that 155 people are as healthy, as well-fed, and as well-rested as possible. The correct lighting, the best food in the armed forces, a psychological screening process that filters out everyone who cannot hold up under pressure. Not out of humanitarian concern, out of calculation, because a human being here is as critical a system as the reactor or the MEA scrubber. If one component fails, everything fails. When a submarine returns from patrol and the crew steps onto the deck for the first time, they squint in the sunlight. After 7 weeks without natural light, the eyes literally cannot adapt quickly enough. This is not a metaphor, it is physiology, and it is in that moment that you understand how deeply engineering has reached into biology. Behind that steel hull is not simply a weapon, it is the most complex closed organism humanity has ever built, where silence is a weapon, where air is a manufactured product, and where every human being is part of the design.